So now we're going into the legal part and what we know is true in 3910 and so on. And I'm probably playing into someone's hand now, and that's all right. Again, let's not get out to the nth degree in the legal part. We don't want to look like the guy in the checkered shirt. So, but if you have burning questions on 3910, I'm quite happy to answer, and I'll tell you if I don't know. So, first of all, I guess common law is what we need to look at. That governs, I guess, everything we do with contracts, etc. And it's an accepted principle in common law that a contractor has control over how the work is carried out. This control is subject to the terms of the contract, of course, and extends to the contractor's entitlement to program the works in a manner that enables early completion. So that's the common law part. That can, of course, change with 3910, but it doesn't unless we have special conditions, because in 3910, and here you can see the slash, who talked about 2023. So 2023, the version of that is on the right side of that slash. So that's the different clauses. 3910 talks about and says that there is no express obligation on the contractor to comply with the program, and it specifically states that compliance with any program required shall not relieve the contractor from any of its duties, obligations, or liabilities under the contract. So in other hands, as a contractor, you have free hands to program. You are in control of the program, and you're also responsible. And I would say it's quite a good way to work as a contractor. And I know we haven't got a lot of consultants here, but I would suggest that we never change that, because if you want, as a consultant, if you want to be the one that approves the program, then somehow you also become liable, and that's probably getting quite tricky with, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 subcontractors and suppliers at the same time. So I would suggest you do something else, and I'll get back to that. I'll suggest that you look at the contractor's program, the quality of the program, and there's some quite easy tests you can do to see if the contractor is actually planning or if he's just putting a pretty picture up. Also, the subcontract agreement, SA 2017, says that where the head contract requires the contractor to prepare and update a comprehensive program, the subcontractor shall provide all necessary assistance to the contractor to fulfill that obligation. So if you're a main contractor, you can get help, and you should ask the subcontractor for help to make sure that we get their knowledge into the program, and not only their knowledge, but also their commitment. Also in SA 2017, it says in there that the contractor and subcontractor must discuss proposed changes to the subcontractor's work program with the view to ensure that the contractor's current construction program is maintained. So on the client side, we can say to the client and the client side altogether that don't worry, we will look after all this. You don't need to, we're keen to talk to you, but you've got nothing really to do with this contractually. On the subcontractor side, it's different. Of course, if we've signed up and there was a question from a subcontractor about how we deal with that, well, we have to, and that's straight in the subcontract agreement that we sign up to. That's our obligation. We need to talk to the subcontractor when we change things. Right, 3910, and again, the two different sub-clauses under 2013 and 2023 talks about, it sets out when we when the program is a comprehensive program, we have 20 working days, that's, I think, the main part that's different to just a program. And then it lists a whole lot of things that needs to be in the program. And I think it's a good list. It looks quite innocent and easy, but I don't think it is. And it's quite nice that there's not a lot of other things in there. I like to talk about the 20 days because this is what we often see on our programs or in our contracts, that, and this is 3910 standard without any special conditions. After acceptance, we say, well, 10 days after that, we have possession of the site, but we have 20 days to do the program. Do we need 20 days? I think we do. I actually think we need a whole lot more, and we do that. We keep making incremental improvements all the way through, pretty much. But to start a job with only 10 days for the project manager to only have 10 days without any work going on site, I think is not very good. And it gets worse, I think, because what we see all the time is that the possession of the site, the 29th of July, gets written into the contract. And then we don't get acceptance. We get, well, we do, but we get a letter of intent. And yeah, we want to sign up, and then we get into getting the contract signed. And we don't really have acceptance before the contract is signed in most cases. And I would think that that's industry practice, because I think about 90% of our jobs are like that. Very rarely do we get an acceptance and then we sign the contract later. So the acceptance comes when the contract is being signed. And guess what? In the contract, we've got that date. And when do you think we sign the contract? Here or there? There. So we end up having 2 days or so in preparing a program and get ready for site. And I don't think that that's a good way to work. And I think we need to, as an industry, to talk about that. I talk often to our regional managers about that, or I did when I was program manager. And I said, why do you sign a contract like that? That's not very good. We've got no time to plan. And they say, oh, our consultants and client side get upset if we start to change things. But would anyone get upset if we change things? Would we not want the contractor to plan, I guess, is my question. And it might, in the first instance, be sounding like, well, we get started on site. But I think if we go back or sort of step back a little bit, if we give the contractor the time to plan, we get a much better product. And I also believe we can squeeze the job to be in a lot shorter duration. There's a book out called How Big Things Get Done by Bent Flyberg and Dan Gardner last year. Anyone? Has anyone? Yeah, excellent. Good stuff. It's a. Do you find this? Have you learned from that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an amazing book, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he has got a big database talking about projects that's gone well, projects that's gone wrong, and he finds trends on that. And one of the trends is that the jobs that go wrong is that the front end is not being planned properly. And he talks about think slow, act fast. Acting now feels right, but it's wrong. So very simple language, but believe me, he's quite a clever guy.
I think you're probably preaching to the converted in this room though, right? Like when you look at that contract piece, when you look at how onerous our contracts are becoming now, and the phone book worth of special conditions, that's where we're starting to trip up, right? So
you reckon I'm talking to the converter? I guess I'm just...
Like I don't think there's anyone in this room that's a builder that wouldn't agree with that and go, shit, you should sign the contract on that. And like, it's easy. The question for us as an industry is, how do we get through to our clients to understand that their legal teams are actually standing in their own bloody way?
So it's in a I've been on the client website as well, and I've also been a consultant, and so I know the dilemma of wanting to start the job. And I don't think it's just contractors versus consultants or so on. I think it's a conversation we need to have, because on the other hand, what if we give the contractor 20 days? Are they actually going to produce something which is meaningful? We want to make sure that they do. And so there's trust needed in the industry, and what's the best way of getting trust? I guess conversations perhaps. But it's a good point.
We can't sign up subcontractors and get feedback for the program until we've got a contract.
So what you're saying, we can't sign up subcontractors before?
If you're a head contractor, you need to sign on your
That's right.
subcontractors to get positive feedback, say in
Yeah.
a 20-day period.
That's right. So what we do is we mirror, don't we? So if we get an letter of intent from a client, we also give our subcontractors a letter of intent, and it's not a sort of it's not the best way to work, but it's how we do it often, and yeah. So definitely, I think we need to look at that front end, all of us. And from a risk perspective, because remember, I think we're doing the program. Sorry, yes?
Just picking up on that 20 working days for the comprehensive program, I fully accept that you need that time.
Sorry, do you mind speaking a bit?
The problem I see though is to accept a tender, you are offering a period at that point, potentially before you prepare the comprehensive program. So your offer to the client is for a dollar value for a duration before you get to that 20 working day period. So how does the contractor best ensure their offer is deliverable at that point before you get to?
So how do we ensure not to fall into this trap here? I think if the client side wants to put a date in the contract, we then need to say, or 20 days after acceptance of the contract, whichever date comes last.
I mean, the contract duration, it will be an offer as part of your tender that gets accepted. So you've already committed to an overall duration before you prepare the comprehensive program.
There's two different things going on there. I think one is the duration that you have been contracted to perform the contract works under, and as a contractor doing a lump sum fixed price on a build-only 3910 contract, you have to take that risk, right? You have to put a line in the sand and say we'll get it done by this date. What we're talking about here with the comprehensive program is building a tool that can be used to track and report progress against, and a tool for planning the project once it's in flight, a tool for using to identify delays and claims. So yeah, they'll never be the same documents, the program that was prepared for the tender and the comprehensive program.
Yeah. Okay. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm saying down here, be careful of black swans flying into your project, and they do fly into our projects from time to time, and I'll show you some black swans. Here's 4 within a period of less than 3 years in Auckland, and I'm sure there was also a couple of small black swan docklings in between as well. So imagine if we were able to squeeze a job in between, compared to having a job that's extended out over one of these, or even more, over 2 or 3 of these black swans. So we are by asking the contractor to prepare and plan well, we are de-risking the job for the contractor and for the client. So it's a win-win. And probably mostly for the client. All of these black swans were paid for by the client pretty much. So we are doing the client a favor if we give the contractor enough time to plan. And I need to just talk about one little thing that I find a little bit counterproductive in planning, and I'll leave it at that. Just one clause that I don't really like, and I think we should all try to get rid of. This clause here says that the following rules shall apply to the engineer's assessment of the contractor's entitlement to an extension of time under 3910 or under 1031. The event in respect to which the extension of time is sought must be one listed in 1031. That's kind of a repeat of what it says already. So that's not really, that's just repeating what was happening. B, the event in respect of which the extension of time is sought must have caused or will cause actual delay to the practical completion of the contract works. I also think that that's already mentioned in the general condition. Well, here we go. No extension of time will be granted unless the delay has affected the critical path of the contract works such that practical completion cannot be achieved by the due date for completion. And I know you can't just read one clause out of the whole thing, but I am in this place here, and I'll just go with that. So what this says is, if we get delayed and practical completion does not go past due date, the contractor doesn't get paid for that extension. And I'll show you an example of that. This is how we would like to program. And we program, this is the due date, this is what we promised the client. And so we try to deliver early and have a practical completion that comes in before that to finish on time. It's like a contingency. We know that something will happen. Have you ever tried to get out of the door with kids? You want to get out of the door at 10 o'clock? It's near impossible. But if you say 5 to 10 we need to be out there, it will probably be 10 before we're all out. And I think this is a very sensible way to program. And what will happen if that clause gets built into all our contracts is, because you can see we can't get paid for the first 5 days here. So what contractors will probably do in the future is they will do a program like this, where practical completion is now right on top of due date. And if there's a delay now we can get paid. But does that make us work faster? Probably not. And it gets even worse if someone's got a good idea and say, if we invest 30,000 in something really smart, we can save a month on the job. And let's say the client would like that. Are we going to invest that money and move the practical completion this way? Probably not, because we know that if we get delayed, we won't get the benefit of that. So it's a clause that's very counterproductive in my view. And all I'm saying with this is, I think we need to just make sure that whatever the intention is of our special conditions, we need to really see what they do to program and to behavior, I guess.
Isn't anything apart from that suggesting that the contractor owns the float?
No, there's not. So when we can't see it in the contract, we probably need to go to some other pieces of authority. And we've got the Society of Construction Laws Delays and Disruption Protocol. There's a forensic analysis standard from the States, and they say that, they sort of regulate that when the contract doesn't do it. So, yeah, and I think in there it says that float is probably owned by the project. Right, so that was the 20 days. Item B here, a critical path network analysis showing the activity durations, estimate and dependencies. That looks very innocent, but it's not. We're opening a can of worms with those words, and I'll just show you what that means. And you probably know, but it's a critical path network analysis is like a term, and so we are getting into the space of exactly that, the Society of Construction Law, the forensic schedule analysis from the States. These two standards here, by the way, if we're talking first principle thinking, they're pretty much the top documents in the world. That all literature on program refers to those two, not a third one, those two. So from a first principle point of view, I would say it's a good place to start and read those. They also say that they're not replacing the contract. So if the contract says something and this says something else, then the contract applies, of course. So a critical path network analysis there's a lot of terms around that. And there's some guidelines being put out from these two, plus the Defense Contract Management Agency as well, the DCMA. This is the US Defense Force. They have about 300,000 contracts that they run every year. So they've got a lot of contracts. A lot of them are actually building work. And so they put out some guidelines, some very simple ones, that makes the program better, no matter what the program is, no matter what sort of specialist area you're in, whether you are in fit out or building a warehouse or taking steel down from a skyscraper. And this is where we're going now. We'll start with that one. You can read the words here, and we'll get back to some of them. Logic between the tasks, lead and lag, relationships, hard constraints, high float, negative float. I wouldn't mind just talking about high duration. So they say we can't have a long duration on a task. Why is that? Eh? It lacks specific, yeah. And so it shows that we're not really planning. And so that's, I just wanted to mention that one. Missing tasks, of course, and so on. So these 14 tests are fairly easy to do, and that when you've done them, it will highlight where you might need to improve your program and do things better. And it doesn't really deal with your knowledge on contracts. On the construction part of it, but it shows you whether you plan or not, whether you are into the detail or not. So let's go into dependencies. They all three point to that we need to use finish to start. And down here we can see even Microsoft Project, you can see is here's a start to start, and it's written down as this, but Microsoft Project puts it in as a default. There's no letters behind a finish to start. On the Gantt area, we can see what that looks like. Start to start was the one I was just mentioning here, and we can see again what that looks like. When the first task A starts, so does task C. I guess this is a little bit wrong to say you can't use it, but we need to use mostly finish to start. If you can give me an example, maybe after the break, on logically and first principle thinking, when do we use these? Let me know. Finish to finish is also there. It's called if, and on the Gantt chart we can see it like that. So these two tasks finish on the same time. If the top one is being delayed out, so will the bottom one. Lead, which is pushing things on top of each other, is looking like -1. And we can see that these two tasks, the blue task overlaps the yellow task with 1 day -1, and the same with lag. It's just the other way around. Now we create a plus and we create a space. So that's the lag. So we shouldn't use lag. Is that right? No lag. Do we have lag in a program? We probably do. When do we have that? Curing. And so what all three documents are saying, please don't call it lag. Call it what it is. And or if you want to use lag, then put a note into your program. You can do narratives in your program and say the lag we've got on that activity is curing of concrete. I don't know that lag is the best way to do it, because lag only works on working days. If we have curing and we can use the weekend, maybe that is a better way. So so that's perhaps one reason why we don't use it for curing. Let's move on. In our tenders, we sometimes get asked to put early start, early finish, late start and late finish into our program, and that's the part that you can see here. And who have done critical path manually with with exactly these: early start, early finish, forward pass. Yeah.
Long time ago.
Long time ago, yes, and it's quite a good exercise to do, because you realise the dynamics in, you do it in hand and you realise it. But MS Project does it really well. So, and I don't know whether you can see anything from that data there. We also get asked to put both predecessors and successors in, and we've done that here. In my view, one of them is enough, the predecessors, because they're really double up. One tells you what the other one says. So, if I can say anything to both consultants and project managers doing the program, is to add total slack into your program, because that deals with all of this. And I put total slack, you can see it at the end there. What that does is it's total float in another term. We can see that there's 0 days when the task is critical, and then we have some float up our sleeve for 2 tasks. We can see this task we've got 2 days, and this task we've got 5 days. And what it also picks up is that we made a mistake in the program. Can you spot the mistake? What have we forgot to do? We forgot to put a successor task on one of the tasks. They all have to have predecessor and successor. And total slack kind of picks it up. If you imagine a program being 200 days long, that total slack would be a very high figure, and it will sort of draw your eyes to it. So at a glance, you can actually do what all this was set out to do. Total slack, so good to use, in my view. Constraints. There's 8 different types of constraints underneath the tasks. The default is, of course, as soon as possible, so the task will start as soon as it can. But we could also have it as late as possible. I don't know that it's a good idea, and all 3 of these documents say, well, we need to program everything with as soon as possible. Definitely, well, we can use some of the others, but definitely not the hard constraints, the must start on or the must finish on. The old school project manager might say, well, you must finish this job on this date, but that's not how 3Now&O works. So we're not doing that, even though we get told by an old school project manager. I'd like to then move on to a bit of an example of programming. Don't worry, I'll just do 2 trades. So here's an office building. We got the first floor, we got the ground floor. I'll just get the police out of the way. And the guidelines I just talked about, they assist in choosing a good methodology, and they also expose the lack of methodology, and for instance, painting yourself into a corner. And I'll show you my program here. Here's the 2 trades, stopping and painting. And the question is, what 2 guidelines have I compromised on? What is it that I'm doing wrong here? Duration, yes. 6 weeks. Does that look right if we're not talking about painting of trim for that office building? Probably reasonable. But yeah, it's not. There's no planning. There's no specifics in it. What's the other guideline that I have compromised? What?
The duration is too long.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. Duration is too long. We can short that down to make it more specific in the other one.
No predecessor.
No predecessor. No, sorry. Yes, there's no predecessor. Well picked up. Yeah, I haven't put that on there. What about the lead? The lead. That was the one we said. Let's try to avoid that, because what are we planning here? Is this planning?
Yeah, we've got finish to start, so each room.
Yes, I've got finish to start. So That's as per the guidelines. But I'd like to ask you, what about access? How do we know what area to access? When the stopper starts, they might block some of the access. They might block the stairwell while they stop. What about the void? There's a void, this area here. We need a scaffold up. What would that impact? How does that impact on the program? You want to have a look? What about second fix, joinery and services and waste, etc.? There's a lot of things that we really can't answer with that program, and so my message is we were picked up on not following the guidelines with these two rules, and so we need to follow it. And I would suggest that we do that and we start planning. So we could start asking the stopper, how big an area? Can you stop the whole area in one go in one day? And he says, nah, but I can do half. Okay, so now we can perhaps split the building up into half, and maybe we start in one side and then go to the other side. And suddenly we're sort of starting to plan. And then the program looks something like this. There's a couple of successor tasks missing, but if we look between the stopper and the painting, we start on the first floor. Is that a good place to start, or is it better to start on the ground floor? Probably at the top floor, but it could be better the other way around. We want to maybe work our way out through the entrance down the bottom. Let's start on the east side. We stop. Let's give them 7 days. We've put down the duration to something a little bit more smaller. And then we say to the painter, once the stopper finishes the east side, you start. That's planning and direction. Not, we overlap this with the lead and whatnot. No, this is very clear. You need to start as soon as he's finished. And then we can move to the west side, and then we can move to the ground floor. And you can see how it becomes much easier now to answer the questions about what about the stairwell? How do we have access up through one of them when we do the east side, and then the other one when we do the west side, or how do we do it? There's a whole lot of questions that I like to leave unanswered, but you can see how now we're actually planning the job. And I think if you are a consultant, you can check if we use finish to start with no lead and lag, and we have short durations, there must be some planning being done. And if not, you can call it out, because then you can say, well, that doesn't look logical. Whereas it's very difficult to call the other one out with just 2 lines. And our template that we have created has its own tests. So there's the 68 guideline test built into the template, and it's very simple. And for those of you who work with 3910, with the MS Project, you would know that durations, for instance, you can just go and filter, and you can just filter durations that are larger than, say, 10 days or 7 days, and you get them all. And it's a good way to look a project manager over the shoulder and say, hey, you've got some really long durations, perhaps you should shorten them. And that's where I think the consultants, instead of saying we want to approve the program, they need to say, we're quite keen to see you plan this. We don't think you planned, here's a 30-day task. That doesn't look like it's planned. Then at least as a consultant, you've sort of called the contractor out. So when they put an extension of time claim through, well, you are a bit woolly in your words, and I told you from day one that was probably the reason. So it works both ways, I guess. Most of our guidelines are in the preparing of the program. Let's just look at one. Summary task with dependency. We can't have that, or we don't want that. We only want task dependency. So a summary task should never have a dependency. Well, that's what we are saying. Any questions, or I think we might have a dead battery?
When you specifically say about durations, meaning high durations, given that you have like a long-term project, say 10 years project, you might not have that visibility over some specific task.
Yeah.
That you can break down at that start of the project.
Yes.
Is this assessment that you're saying, is that an initial assessment that you get?
It is, yes, and we have, sorry, I'll just check again. It's a good question, and yes, this doesn't work anymore. It's a good question. So the Roscommon job you saw, for instance, we detailed everything in the first month or 2 months, 3 months, and then, for instance, the interior work was just, I think it was 10 weeks or 11 weeks, and that was done because we simply had to focus on the drain layer and the structural steel and the first trades, and then we left that part. So it's kind of, again, incremental improvements or continuous improvement. And then, so what we should really do, and what we actually have done up here, is we say within the first 3 months, have you got your tasks at the right length? So yeah, good question.
Would the duration that you're talking about,
Yep.
high duration will obviously be relative to the duration of the total project as well?
Yes, but, well, is it? Because most things, I think, no, I think it's the other way around. I think you need to look at it from a bottom up rather. And so if you have a room, and I've done the NAFA prison job, a cell, how many people can work in that cell? Not more than 1 or 2. So if you look at it that way, you need to say, well, we can only have this many people in here, so the task of doing that is what it is. And we can actually then program and scale it up, is my view. And we had 400 cells, and so this is just happening 400 times. And by doing that, you also end up being able to track the subcontractors. How far are you through? Whereas if you say 100 days, well, I'm halfway. Well, how do we know? We need to then go out and do a spreadsheet and check it out. Whereas the program, we can track the program. Have you done wing A, the first 6 cells or whatever, bang, and so on. So yeah, so I would say big projects should still be very detailed planned.
So how did you get your comprehensive program out in your 20 days if you had your interiors down as 12 weeks, 3 months, whatever?
Yeah.
Was that acceptable as a comprehensive program?
What was the common law clause saying that we are in control of the job, and we are also responsible. So it is, I would say it's acceptable if we know at the time, and we could, what we actually did we had a tender program that had some thoughts already, but it wasn't the right interior people, and they were not really committed, and so we didn't dare put their bits in, so we just put a line in. But yeah, good question. Yeah, I would say we are in control of the program, and if it's sort of 6 months out, then that's fine.
The ATC would request further information.
Eh?
The ATC would request further information surely if they wanted more detail.
Yeah, and if you are on the client side and you're not happy with it, well, call it out and say, hey, we're not happy with that part here because we think there's a risk.
Not calling it out,
Asking, yeah, sorry, yes, now we are in a...
There's a real project strategy piece around leaving those big fit-out durations though, right?
Say again?
There's a bit of a project strategy piece around leaving those big fit-out durations. Like you've got to be sure that you've built your building right.
That's right, yeah, so you need a couple of good interior people who say, we can do this if you allow 11 weeks, we'll do it. And then you start detailing it later with the electrician and all the services and whatever. Yeah. So all I did was I took the 6 tasks or the 6 guidelines we just talked about here. I think if you haven't done this sort of work before by testing your own program or a consultant's, a contractor's program, well, these are really easy tests to do, and it'll give you a good feel for how good the program is. So I hope we can give that next preparing program a tick. and then move on to the updating and tracking of programs. So 3910 says that where a program is a comprehensive program, the contractor shall provide updates of the program at intervals stated in the special conditions. And what are they normally? Monthly? Yeah, monthly. So Jeff said that we do them fortnightly, and I guess we do that because a lot of our jobs are remediation, and a lot of water runs under the bridge in 14 days, and so we simply do them fortnightly. That program you saw, the fin removal job, we do that weekly. So we catch up weekly, but we only issue the program to the client side fortnightly. But if we don't do it weekly, there's so many things happening, like you saw with every day there's a delay of weather or whatever. And so, yeah, every Monday I meet with the site manager, we draw a line for Friday afternoon, where are we at, and then we track the program. This clause here is a dynamite clause, and I'll just read it aloud and you can sort of listen to it. This is, the contractor shall use the program to track and report actual progress against planned dates and to forecast the likely date of practical completion of the contract works or separable portions. This takes, you saw Jeff had some of our how-to guides up on the slides, so this is one of them. How to track a program, and it takes about an hour to explain, and it's just that clause. That's all it is. And it's quite interesting. We developed that over some time. We got it wrong, we improved it, we got it better, and eventually we had it. And then a couple of years later I saw, if you know Menlo Academy, Steve Edge, he did a video on how to track a program, and I could not believe it. He pretty much followed our process, but of course, because there is really only one way to do it. And I'll explain that. So we do that bi-weekly process. We start with the master comprehensive program, or the current program. We put that status line down. We update actual starts, actual finish, and remaining durations. We capture any delays. We reschedule any incomplete or incomplete work. We make some revisions and changes, and that could be, the changes could be just that we've received 5 contract instructions, so we put them in. We baseline the job, so the grey line you saw, we baseline it, and then we save it, and then we send it out to both subcontractor and client at the same time, on the same day if we can. And we try to make our project managers accountable in the project review. They need to say the current program is this, and it was sent to the client here on that date and to the subbies on that date. And it can be tricky to do, but when we have one program, it is fairly easy to do. I'll show you the complexity. Here we go. So that's just the same clause again. And here we go. These are just one task, and so there's a lot happening, and I'll just explain, if I can, quick.
On the previous slide.
What was that?
Yeah, on the previous slide that you had there. So you're issuing that out to the client. You've captured, then you've re-baseline.
Yep.
So as we own the as you say, that we own the program, so if we're the principal tech contractor.
Yep.
When you're issuing that out, so long as that is not affecting critical path, there's no need for review or consultation. That goes out, even if you're resequencing tasks, moving those tasks
Correct.
around. That doesn't have to be reviewed by anybody external or commented on.
That's right. But we could be past the due date, and we would still send it out. Then the engineer can say, well, we would like to know how we can get it back. There's a clause in 3910 saying that, but we're not hiding it. What we might do and have done in the past is we've asked a couple of subbies, can we get it back so we don't have to answer these questions, or So that does happen, yeah. But we try to do that in, you know, as I showed in the beginning, when there was a delay, we try to put that out to both parties and say, hey, this is what we are seeing right now. What can we do? And we certainly want the answers before the engineer asks us, what are you doing about this, Karsten? Well, we want to know. Yeah, good question. So, so we need to use the program, and I'm just saying that's the program, one line, to track and report actual progress, and the actual progress here is that dark blue, so that's the progress that we've captured against the planned dates, and the planned dates are the baseline from last month, so that's the planned dates, and forecast the likely date of practical completion. That's the remaining part. How much do we still have to do? And sometimes the site manager or the project manager doesn't know, and then we ask the subcontractor, how many days have you got till you're actually finished? We want to know your best guess. And once we've done that, we pretty much track the program, and it looks very easy, but there's so many what if and contract instructions coming in, delay analysis as you saw in the beginning, and so on. So it is a fairly complex task, but interestingly, it is done or should be done if you follow the 3910 and you use sort of first principle thinking. It should be done in the same way everywhere. Here's an example from the fin removal job that we are doing right now. So you can see this is from June, so it's not that long ago. And again, here's the status line going down. Everything on that side is tracked and done. If it's not, we move it to the other side. We just started on that task here, which is taking the fins down on the northern side. And I think we've done one day here. And you can see, so I made a tracking table, and it's also in the template. So this is not the table that we're sending out to the contractors and to the clients. We have a comms one that we send out. They don't need to know the actual start, actual finish. They just want the plan. When are we doing stuff? So it looks a little bit different. We need to track. We do that with actual start, actual finish, and remaining duration. Those three, we can populate that, and when we do that, we track the program. Can you spot one really unusual thing with this program? And it's in relation to the planned dates and where we're at.
Is it auto schedule? You haven't got auto schedule on the
Eh?
side? It's not auto schedule.
It is auto scheduled, yes, it is. We're actually one day ahead on this program. From what we planned last fortnight till this one, we've gained a day, and we show that. And I think in my career, because I've been a consultant as well, I've never seen that from contractors, apart from once or twice at Brosnan. We've got a couple of people who does that. Of course, we sometimes gain time, and instead of not showing that and using that as a Schloss fund, we put it in the bank straight away. It's a little bit like money, isn't it? You gain $2,000 or you save $2,000. Well, we need to put that back into profit. We can't just put it into a contingency Schloss fund. So it works, I think, the same way with time. So we try to do that and ask our PMs to track it that way as well.
So you wouldn't be tempted to gain the day and then extend the duration for tasks at the tail end, so you keep your same completion date, so you've got that in the bag for yourself? So what you're saying there is you gain the day?
Yep.
Off of critical path?
Yes.
Yeah. So in my mind, if I gained the day and we've got control of the programme, I would have a tail end task that I would add a day to keep the same completion date, so that day's our float.
Are you saying due date?
Oh, I'm saying it's a critical path task.
So practical completion.
Yeah,
yes.
You're going to be bringing your EC date back.
That way.
Yeah.
But my due date is the same. My due date for completion is the same. The contractual date that was in the contract is still the same. I'm creating an extra day's contingency.
But if you're giving that away and you're delayed, you've lost a day opportunity for claiming an EOT.
No, you haven't actually. The due date is still there on the same date. We actually create contingency for ourselves. What you'll find is that 3910 says that the engineer shall grant an extension of time for the contract works, and the contract works finishes here. So whatever's on the other side doesn't matter.
So are you saying you're manually scheduling the due date of the project? Is that what you're saying?
No, we actually do that automatically. When we get an EOT, we then move the due date when we get an EOT approved. So we have that running as well.
But your EOT would only be granted on the delays. If you're showing that you're tracking a day ahead, then you've lost a day of your EOT claim.
That's your statement.
Not under the unamended 3910. If they put a clause in like what the clause that cast it out on the screen, yes, certainly.
Yeah.
But under unamended 3910, you commit the claim early. When, as Karsten said earlier, if you made a decision at the start of the job to buy an extra digger at a cost of 30 grand or whatever, and in the hope that you can complete the project earlier, you don't want the principal then to take that time away from you.
Correct. Yeah, and that's we need to understand that in first principle, and that's one of the first things we do look at on our program. Is there any special? Because I'm sure what you're talking about is some special conditions that's over on top of 3910. That job here doesn't have that, and 3910 in its pure form says that the contractor can do this, and they win that day. And if there's a 1 day delay now, we get paid for it. If we win another day and there's another 1 day delay, we get paid for it again. And it might sound a bit not fair, but we do this. We try to push it. We put people on the job to push it that way. So it is fair.
How much more have you got?
I got 4 minutes. Awesome. Unless there's questions before I finish, Pam. Okay. So that was updating and tracking of the program. I hope we can give that a tick. I also hope that I've explained how we use first principle thinking in our programs. And hopefully I've given you some inspiration to rely more on program. Hopefully also there's some practical program solution. And then maybe also some tools to review and improve your programs for the future. Hopefully I can give that a tick as well. So back to the beginning, what I really wanted to get across to you and what I think program does for us is it provides a lot of positive outcomes, and we should rely more on them. It provides certainty for our clients. It gives a fair outcome for everyone in time of change. And it will or could increase productivity. So we'll give all these 3 a tick, and that's me. Thank you.